All right. You want me to hit the live button or you want to hit it?
I just hit it. 8:01.
We live, baby. So what happened to all these distinguished guests that we were supposed to have tonight to talk about bait? They decided they didn't know nothing about bait.
I haven't sent them an invite yet.
Oh.
We've been what's going on, David? There's David Mercer, guys, with Mercer Outdoors.
What's up, David? Hey, JR, now I can see us live right now on my page.
Can you? Good.
But I don't see no comments on my page. Now I can see them from your page.
Can you click on it and make a comment yourself?
Let's see. Hold on a minute. I didn't think about trying that. Let's see. Yep. Do you see it?
Yep. There's Lori. I see hers. Is that from your page?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, is Ryan going to be on here tonight?
Yes. Well, I hope so.
Yeah,
Have you talked to him?
It's not on my page.
I'm going to send him a...
I'm showing it on mine.
He said that he likes to listen. He doesn't like to be on here. But
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, he'll be all right.
I'm going to go ahead and send all the invites.
All right.
Look at all the likes. Dang, y'all got a whole bunch of likes already. It appears that we only see comments for whichever page we are watching.
So, David Mercer, when you coming fishing again? Oh, I know you was back here. I didn't know you was back here.
You didn't do anything. Is he can he hear you?
Yeah, we're live. Everybody can hear what we're saying. Okay. But I don't know. Let's see. Dave said it only appears need to try to get everyone to watch from the same page or comments visible in one place. That's what I was thinking. That's why JR knows more about the thing. But we're talking about if people could see it, if they were watching it from my page, if they could still comment on it. My phone lets me comment. If I'm watching it from my page, from my phone, I can put a comment up and it comes up. But no, it don't seem like nobody else in the world can. I don't know. I don't know. Unless it's Joey Jar because my phone's logged in with your account.
I say don't worry about it.
That's the only thing I could figure.
Just have a good show.
Yeah.
That's what I say. Copper, where'd you go?
All right, JR, you ready to roll?
Yep.
Why is everybody so quiet tonight?
Well, the water temp is 62 degrees down here. And I think the shad are getting ready to spawn. The herring, the interesting thing about herring are they tend to act like striper. They'll actually migrate upriver, up to the backs of creeks to spawn. You can tell when they're back there too, because the way I used to tell on Norman is I would go upriver and I would shut my boat off and I would just listen. And if I could hear bait flipping on the points, I knew that the herring were spawning.
What's up, Ron?
What's up, Wes? How you doing?
Living the dream. Hoping I might learn something about bait tonight.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Best thing I can tell people about bait, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but if you got a fucking job and you work, go buy it because it's a whole lot simpler. What's up, Scott?
What's up?
Hey, even Scott Perry started buying his own bait too. So there you go. Scott, when's the last time you actually went on a fishing trip and went out and slung a net all day to catch bait to fish with, honestly?
It was, hold on a second, my volume's set. Year before last.
Do you think it's easier? What's the advantages of buying bait versus catching your own bait?
Lazy. I mean, it depends on the bait. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you good.
Some reason I can't hear you guys that good, but it's all right. Like,
I can hear you, right?
what?
As long as we can hear you.
Yeah, as long as you can hear me, we're good.
All right.
Hold on 1 second.
I feel like y'all have more bait available in South Carolina to buy.
Yeah, like with herring, I mean, I think store-bought herring's way better than fresh-caught herring. Like, I fish fresh-caught herrings, like sabiki rigs. They're soft. They're not very hardy.
I wonder if that's got anything to do with the fact that that's actually it's a saltwater fish.
Well, that most of the time when I'm catching them in the thermocline in the summertime. And they're, it's not like I'm going out there in the winter throwing a net. It might be a different story, but like we have a hard time getting good gizzard shad. We used to be able to get good shad at the stores, but now it's $5-6 a piece, and they're 3 inches long. But so yeah, I do think it's worth the time to go catch big shad if you're fishing for trophy stripers.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of places to buy bait around here, do we, Spivey?
No, that's what I was wondering. How many places local do you actually sell shad or herring?
Herring, we got tons of them, but shad is kind of rare. There's just a few.
Even the bigger bait shops like Lake Caldwell Outdoor Center, I think, is closest to me and Scott. And then we got a few, Scott, I guess you'd say what we'd say kind of off the road. Some people selling bait behind their house. Then you got a couple around Modoc. You got a couple down around Clarks Hill, Palmetto Angler. But even those bigger bait shops, like Scott said, now years ago you could go in there and get herring and pretty much any size gizzard shad you wanted. Now the gizzard shad is just like every year they get more scarce.
I think it's more about the money's in the herring. Party fish guides. You got fewer guys going through there looking for 12-inch shad. I mean, catfishermen, they're not going to pay it because they can get, beat up shad. They don't have to get pristine shad. They can go in the back of the creeks and get some red nose shad, and they work just as good as the pristine shad. So,
yeah.
So, Scott, when you was talking about fresh caught bait, like catching it, using it the bait as soon as you catch it versus buying it in the store, tell Ryan why you prefer buying it in the store.
Well, that's with the herring, not the gizzard shad. I prefer fresh caught gizzard shad 100%. But with the herring, they're just soft. I don't know. They don't even feel like the same bait fish when they're fresh caught. Their bodies are soft. Once they've been seasoned, they get hard scaled, they get really white. Probably all the chemicals they put in the water. They're real hardy, a lot more hardy than the fresh caught bait.
I remember when I first started striper fishing, one thing I learned about herring, and it was the truth. If a herring ever gets red nose at all, throw it in the water. I don't know why. A striper won't even hit it. And what few times I tried it, I never could get nothing to even bite it cut bait when it was red nosed. I don't know why. If it's some kind of chemical, if it's some kind of reaction it has. the fish don't like it, some kind of acid it gives off. But
That's a funny story, and it's true for the most part. But Sumo's my fishing partner. His biggest striper was 31 pounds on Hartwell.
on a red nose herring.
Yeah, he reeled it in, and this herring is like laying on its side. It's got red blotches on it, and he starts to put it back out, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, he's still kicking." Well, there goes the dog. And we were pre-fishing, so I really wasn't worried about it. And damn, if that rod didn't go off at the biggest fish he caught, probably one of the biggest in my boat on Hartwell. So
I remember too, Scott, when you handle a herring, I bought bait, and I bought bait before this was supposedly cured. That's it, been in there 2 or 3 days. And you go to open your bait tank up, and you can see like 5,000 scales. When all the scales start falling off of a herring, shit cannon, it ain't no good. You might as well use it for chum.
I know, like most of our bigger bait shops, they'll put their fresh caught herring in the back tank, and they don't sell it till it's been in there a few days season.
Like curing it
What's
out.
going on, Pete?
Yeah, it's Captain Pete. He's on the Starship Enterprise.
I got a whopping 5 minutes, maybe not even 5 minutes, like 2 minutes. But my thing on baits, it's awesome when you have it, and it sucks waking up at 4 a.m. to get it.
Have you ever caught bait over at the skimmer wall?
No. Back in the day, I used to catch bait at the Mount Holly Dam over there. It was always about this time, April, May, I guess. I guess the start of Lake Wiley there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Hey, guys, I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Damn, Pete, you got 4 bars on your shoulders there? Does that mean
That's-
Maybe not.
That's
here's the most impressive thing here. Got my,
Oh, yeah.
bust out my
what's
Duke lanyard.
That's what's up. Yeah. Those you brought up a good point. I think that you're talking about a weir dam, and anytime you can find a weir dam on a lake,
Hold on a second. Let me
go catch bait.
put on my headset real quick.
Those are all gizzards at that dam, though, ain't they?
I guess it depends. You could yeah, you're not going to catch any herring, I wouldn't think.
We used to catch bait there with a dip net when I was little.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you'll notice, like when I used to fish tournaments and we'd fish twice a month, like right around the herring spawn, the bait shops would have like these little bitty herring, and they were terrible because all the big herring are gone to the bank. They're spawning out, so they catch most of their bait with sodium lights under bridges, deep water. So if you were struggling to get good bait, that the herring spawn was on.
Yeah.
So I've heard of guys using the bilge pumps with long hoses on them to get down there to that cool water to make sure that their bait tank water matches the degree of the water that the bait are actually coming out of.
Yeah, well, if you like summertime keeping bait, I used to I would go to the bait shop, like say it was a tournament or something. I'd go to the bait shop and I'd dump a whole bag of ice in my filter side of my Ron Vest 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd put my herring in there. And then by the time I got to the lake, all the ice is melted. No, I didn't want the water. If I made the water 50 degrees, them herring are going to look perfect, But you don't want that, like maybe 5 or 10 degrees above lake temperature. Because if you get them down 50 degrees and you drop them in, they're going belly up. I mean, they're going to go shock and they're done. So
I guess if you wanted to be a stickler, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish, Scott.
Well, I mean, the key to good bait was to keep them just cool enough in the summertime. Like you didn't want them hot where they were throwing ammonia and getting sickly, but you didn't want them so cold they were lively, because you knew as soon as you dumped them in, they were done.
Mm-hmm.
Answer one question for me here real quick. I got like literally 2 minutes, I guess, where I got to run off. Back in the day, I don't know if it's a common thing now, but why does coffee creamer take that dang foam off the top of the water there in the bait tanks? I don't know if you guys know that. Back in the day, we used to put a little coffee creamer in there, the powder creamer.
I can answer it. You're a big smart airplane pilot. You're just breaking the surface tension. Oil, grease, Frito, coffee creamer, it just breaks the surface temperature. So it don't bubble up, it just escapes.
I use
Gotcha.
Cheetos. You can use
Fair enough.
Cheetos. A Cheeto
Yeah,
will do the same thing.
Cheeto,
Show you how much I use
Dorito.
live bait nowadays.
Yeah, it just puts oil on the surface. I mean, like
And none of it's good for the bait, though, right?
the
I mean,
foam off is really the best thing. I mean, it's cheap. You put it in a spray bottle, it'll last you 5 years. I put mine in a spray bottle with water. You ain't got to dump pure foam off in there.
Gotcha.
Just put a little bit in a spray bottle, some water, and hit it. It's gone.
Joey Bagwell's on here tonight. He's never been on the show since we've been doing it almost 2.5 years. We're talking about bait tonight, so Joey's up in the mix.
He don't know nothing about bait. He ain't caught. He threw a net in 6 years.
I think Spivey earlier asked about bait in NC. I think I remember back in the day, Lake Norman Marina used to sell baits. And I think it was gizzard shad only. And I do believe, I don't know which year it was, but I think it has become illegal to sell any shad in the state of NC. I could be wrong on that, but I do believe that there was some law passed in like 2003 or something that does not allow shad to be sold in NC, which is stupid if you ask me.
Isn't there a law in Alabama now,
Yeah.
Scott, you can't transport bait nowhere? You have to use the bait you catch in that lake?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's a recent law. That stupid law. But
Yeah.
They were wanting to try that.
All right, guys, I'm out of here. See ya. Enjoy the show. See ya. Take care.
safe flight.
Wouldn't they want to try to do that in Tennessee? I heard something about it about 2 years ago, and then it just kind of went away.
Yeah, like killing the foam from a beer by wiping your finger. Yeah, same thing. You're putting the oil off your finger in the beer. Yep.
That guy I just met, I think his name was Jason Spence. I was telling him about the Cheetos and everything, and he was acting like it ain't good for the bait. Anything out other than foam off.
Yeah, I mean, foam don't even bother me really. I mean, just because I can't see what I'm netting, but all you're doing is clearing up the surface. Ammonia's still being released in the water.
Well, what causes the foam? Is that from ammonia, or is that from another? Just from
I could tell you, but I'm just guessing. I think it's a release of like ammonia, crap, everything else. If you catch, I mean, you can put 10 fresh gizzards in a 50-gallon and it's going to foam up like crazy. So you put 10 store-bought gizzards that have been in a tank a few days in your tank, and you're going to get hardly no foam. And the warmer it is, the more you're going to get.
Joey says to leave the foam. It keeps the slime coat on your fish, herring, or shad. Just dip the foam out with a net.
There you go. Yep.
And
I don't know if you've seen the videos of these bait catchers, but when they're coming in, I mean, they got 5-6 inches of foam on top. They just take the net and fling it off.
Yeah, foam will be like that high.
Yeah. I mean, it is aggravating when you're trying to get that nice 12-inch shad out of the bottom you want. You got to see it, right?
It makes you wonder if the foam, because the foam's nothing but made up of a bunch of tiny bubbles. So each time those little bubbles are popping, expelling
gas,
the ammonia and the gas and everything. And so I wonder if that's actually helping clean the water.
Well, I was always thought that the foam would trap it, where if you remove the foam, it has a better chance of releasing the gases. But I don't know.
That might be what creates that barrier that you need to break to let it escape, is that foam might prevent the barrier from forming.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, keeping fresh caught bait alive, in the winter, but like ain't bad. But like in warm weather, keeping fresh, there's an art to it. And them guys, Joey knows more about it than anybody, and he ain't gonna tell you. It's an art. It's secrets. There's a lot of secrets in bait keeping, man. Them guys are good at it.
I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember, JR. I know Scott does. I bought a tank. I was gonna try to keep bait at my house. This thing was like 700 gallons. It was a big old rubber tank. Patrick Miller got it for me from somebody. And it wasn't really clear. It was kind of a tannish looking color, but you could actually see through it. Then I filled that thing up with water, and I forgot how many gizzard shad I put in there. I put some big gizzard in it. And then Jamie K was coming through Greenville, so I bought about 20 big mongos from him. And then I had a couple of catfish. Somebody told me to put a catfish in there and some brim to, to help build up the bow. So I did like 2 water changes, and of course that was getting expensive because the water, it was just getting, I mean, the fish were just, it was just getting shitty looking. So I did a water change and I went fishing in Tennessee, and it was during the summertime or right at the end of summer. When I got back, the tank was like, had this brown looking shit. I mean, it's like in 2 days, the whole tank was just covered in brown shit. And I called Scott and I said, listen, man, I said, I don't know what to do about this tank. I said, the fish ain't looking right. And I said, I've did 2 water changes. I'm fixing to have to do another one. And Scott said, you remember that, Scott? You said, why are you doing another water change? I said, because I've got all this brown shit in the tank. And you said, no, dude, that's what you want. But you want to bio in it. So needless to say, those fish from then on actually thrived. It just made keep it. And then Scott told me about this canister.
Well, hang on one second, Wes. These guys are getting confused. They think that you're talking about your bait tank on your boat, right?
No, I'm talking about keeping bait at the house.
You're talking about keeping it at the house, right?
Well,
It doesn't even have a lid on it.
Gallon. I think
700 gallon, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you got Thomas saying crack the lid, and Daryl's like, do y'all not crack your lid? You know?
Not on this tank.
They're probably talking about the foam and stuff.
But anyway, what I was saying was, so I bought this, I think like $200 for it, and it had a UV light in it. One of the I cleaned that filter twice a week, and at one time I think I had over 100 fish in that tank, a couple of different species. Now, with that being said, Scott, I wonder if you could put a UV light, if you could figure out to put a UV light in your bait tank on your boat, it wouldn't be there long enough to help do anything.
UV just kills algae, basically. It don't get rid of ammonia.
And it kills the organisms, right?
Just the algae, the floating algae. Like, that's why I think it's funny when these bait tank companies talk about, building bio in your, you're not going to build bio in your boat bait tank. I mean, It takes, depending on the temperature, it takes weeks, months to build up bio in a filter.
But mine did it like my tank itself. When I left to go to Tennessee that Thursday, I got back Sunday, and it was like a light brown film around the whole tank. It's like in 2 or 3 days, it just.
The fact that it being plastic and black probably helped expedite that process.
Sunlight does it too, don't it, Scott?
What's that? Sunlight does what?
Don't sunlight help build your bio?
Well, that brown was mostly algae. Your bio is going to be in your filter media, in your filter. You will get bio on the walls of your tank, but I used to put, and True Value is the only place I've seen it. I would start my tank up and I wouldn't put any fish in it. I'd put pure ammonia in it. Capfuls of ammonia for several weeks and then test the water. And when the ammonia started dropping, if I put a capful in, the ammonia was like 7. The next day it dropped to 5, and then to 3. I knew my bio. The bio is just a microorganism that feeds on ammonia.
You don't keep bait in the house no more?
Yeah, I do, just in the wintertime, though. In the wintertime, bio's not important. It's just when the water starts getting warm. Like I can put trout in my tank in December and January, and they're going to thrive. It's just so cold. They release very little ammonia. I don't feed them. I just let them go.
It's interesting. You mentioned about the algae and the sunlight. That's probably got a great deal to do with why your shad and your herring are spawning at night. They only spawn at night. They won't spawn in the daytime. It's probably got something to do with that.
What do you mean bio? That's what I mean. I think I explained it. Bio is the organism that grows on media in the filter, and it feeds on your ammonia. And that's why if you overload a bait tank, you're gonna the ammonia is gonna overpower your bio. So like the longer you have your tank running, the more bio you build up in your media, the more bait you can handle. I'm no expert at it, but it's like it goes back to koi fish ponds, and it's all the same stuff. You're keeping fish alive. It's like natural. It's like how it happens in nature.
Do you see that comment, Scott?
Bio will die in 8 hours with no circulation or oxygen. Yes, probably, but it needs circulation to live.
Now, what kind of material are you using to get this bio to form? They
Well,
need something to grab onto, right?
I got a 50-gallon filter, and I fill it with them plastic sponges, like scrub sponges from Dollar General.
Mm-hmm.
That the foam with the big cell foam. You can use hair curlers. You remember the hair curlers women had, the little plastic hair curler? I mean, anything. It's just a media for it to grow on. It's kind of like coral.
You'll also get a coating on the inside of like the walls of your tank too, I would imagine.
Yes.
So would you suggest painting the walls of you would want to use some type of a coating on the walls that would still allow the walls to be porous so that
it'll grab on. It'll grab onto your PVC pipe, your filter, everything.
Okay.
Daryl Barney wants to know, how long do you keep trout before you feed them, or do you? I know this: the more you feed them, the worse of a mess you're going to have in a tank.
I feed trout like maybe a little bit, a handful, maybe once every 2 weeks. I mean, you just kind of net one. If they start looking, like they're getting skinny, I'll feed them a little bit, but you don't want them crapping in your tank. I mean, trout will live a long time with no food. So, I mean, and there's nothing you can really feed a gizzard shad, but I've witnessed them eating algae off the side of my tanks, like that string algae.
Yeah.
But gizzards will get thin. I mean, if you keep a shad a month or a month and a half, it'll start getting really thin.
So that bait you catch in the wintertime, are you buying it or are you netting it?
It's trout mostly is all I keep now. I might throw some shad in there, but nothing really lives good with trout because trout are so aggressive. They'll just aggravate the shit out of them to stress them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mostly I just fun fish Russell now, so I just pretty much keep trout in there. They're easy to keep. The worst thing about trout is they'll jump out of your tank.
Joey Bagwell's got a good point. He said, if you have to feed them, you're not fishing enough.
That's right.
I was kayak fishing for a little stretch, and I'd forgotten about it. I had like this much water in my bait tank on my boat, and there was one perch in it. I know I've already told this story, but there was one little white perch in there. And I remember I went fishing with Drew Rankin, and we couldn't catch any bait. And I was like, man, we're going to have to wait till dark. I can catch them at night. I can't catch them in the daytime right now. We tried, it didn't work. So we're sitting there. I opened the bait tank and I saw that one perch had been there for 3 weeks. I was like, oh my God, I forgot all about that thing. I can't believe it's still alive, but it was living, I guess, because it was all by itself, but it was living in that much water. And man, we hooked that thing and threw it out there, and Drew caught his biggest flathead, personal best flathead on it.
If there's there's all these secret formulas you can use, but like salt, definitely helps. You can't really put too much in. There's this stuff called
talking about a bait tank.
Both.
No.
Yeah, if I'll fill my bait tank up with city water here at the house, and I put some prime in it, which just kills the chlorine. And then I'll put if it's my 50-gallon tank, I'll put about 5 cups of salt in it. And then I'll head to the bait shop.
So once you got your home tank up and running, the bio level's good. It's just getting rid of the ammonia, etc. Do you still continue to put salt in it?
Yes. I do. I still do water changes. And that's the only time I add salt during water changes.
Well, listen,
and I don't do big water changes, like a quarter of the tank at a time.
Okay.
Well,
but like another thing and especially when I summertime fish with herring and if you're going to Tennessee, you're keeping bait more than a couple of days, and your bait tank is zeolite.
Zeolite.
Zeolite. It's a little white rock, and you put it in like pantyhose, and you throw it in your filter side, and I mean, it works good. I don't know if you've opened a bait tank in the summer and it smells like urine.
Oh yeah.
If you have that zeolite in there, it'll suck it up, and you can actually take it out when you get home and lay it in the driveway, and the UV light will suck all the ammonia out, and you can reuse the same several times. That was one of the best things I used when I was summertime fishing.
What was it called?
It's I think it's ZEO light, zeolite.
Zeolite.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you,
If you Google zeolite, you'll see it. It comes in a container and it's little white rocks.
Mm.
But it's basically a sponge for ammonia. It just sucks the ammonia.
Yeah.
And then you rinse it out and leave it out in the sun and use it over and over. I've used it probably 6 or 7 times before I change it out.
Yeah.
I know me and Spivey can tell you when the shad are spawning, because the threadfin shad anyways, because we can go out to Lake Norman and we hit those dock lights on that part of the lake anyways. We know exactly when they start, don't we, Spivey?
Yeah. I think the problem we run into is like, let's say we catch fresh bait. I guess I just now recently learned they purge as soon as you catch them, and like they filthy up a bait tank like instantly, man.
Well, most guys that catch, say, fresh shad, they'll have a big bucket, like a big tote from Tractor Supply, and they'll put I might be wrong, you bait catchers on here, but like 5 cups of salt and like 10 gallons of water, like really salty. They'll net their shad and they'll dump their shad into that, basically a purge bucket. And they'll let them sit in there with no air or nothing for like 5 minutes. And then all that salt's going to cause them to, expel a lot of that crap. And then they'll net them out and put them in their big bait tank. And any of the shad that look half dead, they'll just throw them back, You don't want half dead shad in there.
when I first started striper fishing years ago, I don't think 2 or 3 people might know this. I ain't told a lot of people, but all I heard about herring, help keep herring alive, put salt in your bait tank, salt in your bait tank. So I'll go down to Bilo and I'll buy like 6 cans of Morton's table salt. So just in case somebody don't know, you might want to be specific, Scott, as to what kind of salt we're talking about.
Non-ionized. You don't want iodine in your
Exactly. Salt. I thought you'd appreciate that. Yes, like pool salt. You can get it usually at Walmart, Tractor Supply.
Yep.
Well, I say Joey's on here. I think he learned just about everything about bait catching from Sean McNew. I think Sean McNew taught him about everything he knew.
Damn, Joey. You're trying to start some shit, ain't you? Big Bird. Now, I thought Sean McNew taught Chris Hovis everything he knew.
I remember we were fishing. We were fishing in Tennessee. We was going up a river in Tennessee. It was me, Shane Reel, Daniel Skipper, and Chris Hovis. And I remember Shane was at the front of the boat with the net. Shane's the best net thrower I've ever seen in my life. He's among everyone I know in the fishing industry. Shane Reel can throw it better than anybody. And he was up
Anthony
there.
Johnson. Anthony Johnson can throw the shit out of a net too.
Well, I mean, they know each other extremely well. They're like brothers from another mother. Although all those Lincoln County boys know each other. So they probably learned about the same time. That's probably on the
hillbillies.
Yeah.
I think they ate at the same restaurant too.
But Shane was up there, and it was interesting because we were in very, very shallow water, and we were motoring up through there, and he was just out looking, and you could see trout darting around because there's trout are native up there, I think they stock them as well. But he would throw the net on shad, and he knew when exactly to throw it. And I would like to have known what's going on in his head, because I've never been able to net shad on the move like that, especially in a river. But those what happens is that bait gets grouped up in that river, and they'll swim around in big giant groups. And when you see a group, you just throw it right on top of them.
Tennessee's a different monster compared to where we catch bait.
Yes.
I mean, it's unreal.
Yeah, our shad are very hard to catch compared to, like, say, skipjack in Tennessee. All you need is a rod and reel. And
I think you guys got a better shad population than we do, or at least seems to be easier to catch shad. A lot of guys go to North Carolina to catch shad.
For about a year and a half.
I don't know. I think that our dams, you can catch them at our dams.
I mean, that's easy. Anything that draws a bunch of them where you ain't got to just motor around catching 5 or 6 here where they're really bunched up.
Yeah, you can get them at any of the weir dams, like the spillways. Like, a lot of people their lakes that they fish, they don't even realize there's a spillway on their lake because they're kind of hidden. Like the one on Lake Norman is at the very back of Hicks Creek. And I mean, you could fish Norman for 10 years and never make it back there to see that thing because it doesn't really show up on a topographical map or your electronics.
So, Spivey, are you catching bait now? I mean, you've been catching bait?
I catch bait for the spring bite. When I'm winter fishing, I'm using artificials just like Pete does. But in the springtime, I go to water a lot, and I like having a live herring there. I hate buying bait, man, but we don't have a lot of options at buying bait, really. I mean, like I said, outside of Robinson's, the Carp Pond sells live herring. Outside of them, and I guess Jimmy Jones, there ain't nobody local that sells bait.
Well, let's pump the brakes for a second. They ain't no carp pond. They're a trophy catfish pond. They suck.
I know the guys in like Alabama, they'll throw like tape nets over. They got deep water docks there. I don't know if you got any deep water docks, but they'll catch a lot of herring.
Deep water.
I don't know, 40 foot.
So are you not shocking them, bringing them up to the surface instantly and killing them?
Well,
anyway?
not in the spring. Like in the summer you would, but in the spring, I mean, it seems to me herring will hang deeper year round than most bait fish. Like,
yeah, you
really don't want to catch spawning bait fish because they're not going to be. I mean, any spawning fish, they're just stressed out to hell. They're going to be hard to keep alive.
Yeah,
I think that might be what we're catching.
It's spawning bait.
I think we're catching on those lights because
I don't know if you notice a lot of these bait places, like when the big shad go up to the dams and they're netting them up, like you say, you know, they're spawning, they're getting ready to spawn, and them bait are terrible. Like, you got to think them fish are like, they're under so much stress. They haven't ate. They're thinking of one thing. They're swimming miles, and then you try to net them and keep them alive. It's
that explains a lot. Virtually
impossible. Spawning fish are stressed out already, and then you're adding the stress of netting them and trying to keep them alive.
I seen a video the other day of a guy. He done the same thing as you was talking about with that black container with all the salt, but he had like a almost like a pen used kingfishing to put bait in, like at a dock, a saltwater dock. But he would have like a floating like pool noodle, and he would dump his bait into like a pen in the lake and leave them in it for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then he would use that to cull like the small baits out and let them like poop or shit or whatever they got to do, and then put them in his bait tank after they done clean themselves.
The only thing about that, I don't think they're going to clean in their natural water. I think you got to really throw the salt to them to make their body naturally purge out, you know.
Well, a lot of guys that I've been with that catch bait too will keep a 5-gallon bucket on their boat, and they'll put a lot of them in a 5-gallon bucket and let them stay for about 10 minutes, keep them real tight together, and they'll usually, like you just said, when you stress them, they'll shit and piss. And they'll release most of it in a 5-gallon bucket as far as the shit.
Too bad Joey won't come on here because he could tell you exactly how to do it.
Well, I just got off the phone with Joey. I was going to see if you wanted to come on, and he said it upset him when you compared him with Sean McNew. So he said he was just going to hang back and listen tonight.
He's probably shaking his head at a lot of my answers, but you get on here if you're shaking your head, Joey.
Yeah, Lee Huffman said Jimmy Jones was out of business. You know, I kind of figured that. You know, he never really told anybody. He stopped answering his phone, and I don't know what's going on with Jimmy. I don't know if it's his health or what, but yeah, I think Jimmy's done.
If Joey's listening, Joey, tell us some of them chemicals you put in that water to make them silver bullets. We know you put it in there.
He don't buy.
I got an idea what it is too.
He don't buy Sean's shad crack.
He might use shad crack.
Hey, Ryan,
damn, Spivey took a shot.
Shots fired.
Ryan, hey, if you ever have to go to Lake Hartwell Outdoor Center, he'll remember you. He'll dip you some bait that was caught that morning.
Hell, he won't be there anyways.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's some beef there.
Yeah, Sean McNew's not a. There's not many people in South Carolina that are a big fan of Sean McNew. But
you got Brian Bear, and you got Sean McNew, and you got Billy Davis. And there's nothing. If you put all three of them together, you still wouldn't have a pile of shit.
You know, I've noticed something about the fishing world is there's always animosity between people, and
Billy Davis and Sean McNew and they're not people. Brian Bear, he don't qualify as a fucking person.
When you get them one-on-one, they're probably pretty cool. If it's,
I've been to Sean's
just you and
place.
them.
I've been down there to, where is it? I can't remember. It's in Georgia by Altoona, or it used to be. I've been down there and talked with him. He's a cocky bastard, but I mean, he's all right.
Guys, I know who they are, but I don't know any of these people personally.
That's
You
that
ain't
South
missing
Carolina stuff.
Mm. I am a member of the bait tank talk that he has on Facebook.
I was a member of it.
He's got all of us blocked. If you had anything that if you know anybody from the SRCG, you're blocked. If you're friends with anybody from the SRCG, you're blocked.
Go in there and say, Scott Perry wanted me to ask you a question.
See if your ass won't get blocked.
Sean McNeil's good at what he does, though. He's good at catching bait and keeping it alive. I don't know how he keeps all them thread fins alive.
He's a big fan of the Shad Shack.
Look, there you go. You're going to purge without salt. As soon as you catch them, they're stressed, so they dump quickly. And the McFools can't lace my shoes and the Crocs.
Damn.
Joey's bait catching fool.
So outside of salt, you really don't add nothing?
Well, from what Joey says, that even without salt, they're going to purge because you're stressing them out. So I guess when fish get stressed, they shit.
Mm.
Now that he's just referring to the purging, right?
Yeah.
Not actually keeping them in the tank. You still
No,
need
yeah,
the
you
salt
want
in the
them
tank.
to, if you don't purge them out before you put them in your holding tank, then they're going to purge in your holding tank, and next thing it's going to be a mess. You know, you're not going to be able to keep anything alive in there. Well, they're going to purge some, even if, you know, but it's just going to lessen the amount they dump in your main tank.
All right, let's talk. We've been talking about filters and bio and all this stuff. Here's something we hadn't covered. Pumps, aeration, and filtration. What do you think?
Socks versus box.
I switched to oxygen about 2 years ago. There again, I just use trout. I use a pump. Like when I had my males tank, I just used oxygen on trout. Now, when you've got say you've got cured gizzard or you've got cured herring, do you still really need to use a pump, or would you be okay with the oxygen, or do you need that current? Do you still want that current flowing?
I mean, I use oxygen some, but I mean, a Danko and a filter work fine. I mean, I don't want to dump oxygen. I mean, yeah, you can put oxygen in there, but even though it ain't bio, it is cleaning a lot of them scales and a lot of the junk out of your tank, pulling it through a filter. I mean, that's basically what you're doing, is keeping the scales out of your bilge pump so it lasts longer. You're not taking any ammonia or anything else out of the water. You're just cleaning the big particles out of the water.
Well, David Mercer, I got news for you.
Filter application. Do you like that better than just like a stand-up filter, or do you like the sock application? I tried the sock, but when I was trying the sock, it seems like what I was catching, the sock was still floating in the water that it was supposed to be filled. You know what I'm saying? I didn't ever understand the sock thing too much.
You're just catching the scales. I mean, it's the same principle. I use a sock in my 50 gallon in my jet boat cut down to hold 20 gallons of water.
Yeah.
So the regular filter box won't work. So I use sock filters on it. I just zip tie socks on it. I mean, you're basically just trying to, like I say, you're trying to keep garbage out of your pump, because nothing will kill a bilge pump more than some herring scales or some shad scales.
Joey said if you don't purge them and you got to be constantly changing water, even on the water to get the ammonia to drop, unless you're not going to catch many.
Right.
Now don't the bucket trick though? I mean, I watched Anthony Johnson do it. Every time he'd throw the net, we'd put them in a 5-gallon bucket.
No, he's saying even if you I think he's saying even if you purge them, you got to do water changes to keep your ammonia down.
Yeah.
When you're purging them, you're getting the crap out of them, which is, I mean, I don't know if it's going to raise your ammonia anymore, because they release ammonia through their skin and everything when they're stressed. But I think it keeps your filters from clogging up and everything else with the crap.
I've had Scott, even in the wintertime fishing in Tennessee, I've had 25 or 30 trout in a 50-gallon bait tank, and they just smell like shit. I do 5 water changes, and they still smell like shit. Then I could go 2 weeks later, put 30 trout in there, and never smell no ammonia at all.
Probably they probably had the trout you went and got. Did you go to the trout farm?
Yeah.
They probably were feeding them heavy when you got them. That time that you smelled a lot of ammonia, they were probably full. We've got trout there at the trout farm, and it looked like, I mean, they just shit up the whole tank, like, because they feed them like dog food, and it's like the whole tank was full of wet dog food within a couple hours.
So how long do they need to be off feed? Like, say you call Brevard and say, hey, I want 5 dozen trout.
I would say at least 3 days, I would think.
Yeah, Joey, I bought a lot of trout from you. I'd have to go to Brevard when you didn't have any, which was very few times, but or sometimes if I was on my way, it was on my way to Tennessee, so I didn't have to go to Anderson and come back. I stopped by Brevard, but that only happened one time. Word to anybody, do not pull a boat up to Brevard, North Carolina to a trout farm. Go to Joey Bagwell's and buy them. It's a whole
I give Joey hell, but man, we got it made with his shop. He's got it set up. Yeah. He knows how to keep them.
It's a nice shop.
And I'm willing to pay enough where he can make money on top of what he's paying. I mean, he's buying these trout, and I'm paying him more because he's keeping them and he's convenient. So.
And he has to pay to have them trout brought down there.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, that's pretty expensive.
But that don't mean I ain't gonna give him shit every time I see him. He's got to keep them bait catchers, and he's got to pay them bait catchers and them fuel bills and them generator bills and that.
I think that's why Peter talks crap about the guys that go upriver on Norman to catch hybrids, is because once they're upriver catching those hybrids are upriver, those herring are also upriver, and that's what they're feeding on, those alewives, and you can't catch them up there on A rigs in the spring. That's why he doesn't like them. That's why he doesn't like bait. That's why he doesn't like. That's why he talks trash about people that go upriver in the spring, is because he can't go up there in the spring and catch them on them A rigs.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I think if you're like really targeting these fish all the time and you want to be the best you can be, you better know how to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
You better know how to cut bait, pull bait, down rod, pull A rigs, because depending on what time of year it is and what's going on, they all are better than the other one at a certain time.
Yeah, you can't be one dimensional. Like in bass fishing, the guys, once the bass are up on the banks, everybody can catch them. It's the bass fishermen that can catch them offshore are the ones that kick ass in the tournaments.
Now, I mean, I just don't troll because probably if I went with like Peter, somebody knew what they were doing, I might enjoy it. But it's just, I don't know, hearing that motor run and I don't know. It's just.
Well, he uses his trolling motor. Most people use their trolling motor nowadays. Everybody used to gas troll, but that was before the Minn Kota Riptide, with the co-pilot and the autopilot. These nice trolling motors came out where the speed is highly adjustable. Everybody used to gas troll. Now hardly anybody gas troll. Well, I would say over 50% of those type fishermen are actually using their electric motors to catch them.
Well, and back when I was trying to do it, everybody had 2-strokes. I mean, you sitting there, and you smelling 2-stroke oil. I mean, it's
you're talking about me.
You can only run a 2-stroke on low RPM.
That's kind of a myth, Wes. I mean, from somebody
every 2-stroke I ever had would build up. I could let it idle for about 5 minutes and it'd go to spit and it sputtered. And you'd have to cut it off and cut it back. I've done the majority of my gas trolling's been on a 2003 one of those XR series saltwater mercury 2-stroke, carbureted 2-stroke, and it would never load up. I mean, I could gas troll all day long, saltwater, freshwater, didn't matter. Me and Shane put hundreds of hours on that motor, and we never had a problem with it fouling plugs or quote unquote loading up. And even my old OMC, I got a 150 Johnson on my boat now, and you can go low RPM all day with it, and it won't load up. So I don't know. Maybe it's just certain outboards, certain models that do that.
Well, even the 4-strokes, they like to be ran wide open. I mean, you'll hear a lot of a lot of guys talk about they're making oil, which they're getting gas past the rings because the motor ain't hot enough.
Yeah, it's a car engine. You don't,
Mhm.
you know, you can idle a diesel engine all night. You don't want to idle a car engine, you know, so it's the same deal. And I wouldn't want to buy a boat secondhand. I would, from a guy that done a lot of gas trolling with it. I wouldn't want to, I would take a higher hour, like a bass boat motor with higher hours
The majority of the hours on my 4-stroke motors are actually idling.
Yeah,
You know
I think that that could actually be more harmful than running it.
I don't know, but I'm not big on me 80 miles offshore and cut the damn things
Because
off.
it's a combustion engine. It's building carbon, and carbon's the enemy. You have to get the carbon out of there. And how do you do that? Putting the hammer down, baby.
Well, I know a lot of the 4-strokes too, like the rings don't expand and seal real good unless they're a certain temperature. That's why they seem to work better wide open when they're building that heat.
Scott, what's the I think Joey and them still, and I guess all your bait catchers are using sodium vapor lights. Is that still the best light to draw bait in?
Yeah, I mean, if you pull up next to somebody with a hydroglow or a LED green light and you drop your sodium over the side with the generator, you're going to pull all their bait. I've seen it happen 100 times in striper tournaments at night. I mean, for some reason they like that low pressure sodium light. I don't know what it is.
Is that the majority of dock lights? Is that what kind of light bulb that is?
Yeah, street lights. Yeah.
I went down to Honeycuts one morning. We were going to in fact, I think we were going to put in at Holiday. You know, but I mean, you was talking about Perry.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle was out there that morning fooling with something. I said, Kyle, what are you fooling with? He said, I'm tired of them son of a bitches coming out there, pulling up beside me, putting their bait lights out, drawing all my bait to them. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm fixing to put enough light in that son of a bitch. I'm going to light a whole damn creek up. They're going to quit stealing my bait. And that's the first time I'd ever heard of that. He said they were coming down there. He'd have his lights out. And somebody come down there and put more light out or using sodium vapor lights. And just all the bait, all his bait that he'd already had drawn in there would go to them. So he went and bought him 2 sodium vapor lights. So,
well, like when I was fishing Striper Kings, the first couple night tournaments, you know, all the boats are within, I'd say, 6 miles of the dam. So I mean, you got 30 boats within 5 or 6 miles of the dam. You got a lot of boats out there. And I had a hydroglow, and I'd drop it out, you know, and I'd start getting plankton, and you know, I start getting the little bait fish building up, and if somebody pulled up, you know, 100 yards from me and dropped the high sodium, man, it'd pull everything. And so I went out and bought me 400 watt high sodium and a Yamaha generator.
You know, a good way
Did you ever get your generator back?
Yeah.
What did it look like?
Oh, it was good.
Oh,
a good way
to
get on a striper bite upriver, you know how they go upriver and up the backs of creeks whenever they spawn, is to go out there at night and find your dock lights. And if you got alewives, or if it's a herring lake or alewife lake and you got alewives or herring on your dock lights, then they're more than likely spawning upriver. They're already, so it's time to go ahead and get on that bite.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing about, like, people talk about the full moon. I mean, if you ever night fish during a full moon, I mean, it just spreads everything out.
It does. Yeah, you're competing with the moon, you know.
And I think my opinion is I know it's a pressure issue, but I think that just spreads all the bait out. Them fish probably feed. They probably gorge all night. And that's why if you do get a full moon bite, it's usually around lunchtime. I guess there's feeding windows.
It's probably a culmination of a lot of things. I think that's one of them. I think another thing could be that these fish, you know, they're not dumb. I mean, they're dumb, but they're also smart in a way because they know when a front is coming. You know, and anytime you get a peak moon, whether it's new or full, a front's going to be associated with that. So if there's a cold front coming, you know, and it's a full moon or a peak moon, especially a full moon. I think a lot of these full moons that people don't do well on are the full moons that are bringing in a cold front. And so they'll feed up heavily, you know, leading up to that full moon. And then it's like the day of and they just shut off.
Well, if we had a night tournament, like when I was fishing all the time, and it was a full moon night tournament, I mean, it might be 15 to 18 pounds wins. But if it's like black dark night, you're looking at 28 to 30 pounds to win. I mean, it definitely affects the bite.
I got a question for Joey. Joey, like I've seen you just mentioned, yeah, we're on a full moon tonight. On a full moon, do you still send guys out to catch bait on full moons, or you just try to catch bait on nights it's not a full moon? I mean, is it worth your time to send somebody out to try to catch bait on a full moon, I guess is my question.
I would guess he doesn't unless there's a tournament or something coming up and he needs it, because
I would like to look at water levels during a full moon and see if that is contributing to that lack of a bite.
I think it's the light more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main factor, because it's activating the plankton all over the lake and scattering the fish. You scatter the bait, you're going to scatter the fish.
I think the fish are feeding like crazy on a full moon night, but I just think they're scattered. I mean,
they are scattered, but if you could find the section of lake that's holding the most bait, that would probably be the section I would go to, because certain sections, like on a man-made reservoir, your shad spawn, your herring spawn, they're gonna take place in waves, just like fish do. They're not all going to spawn at the same time. So if you could get out there and you could find out, what's going on as far as the spawn goes, then it might help you decide, if it's a full moon, what part of the lake you would like to fish. It might bring you a little more luck.
Well, most night fishing for striper is done like on anchor or a spot lock down rod, and I think the full moon is them fish are they're roaming, they're gone. Like you might hang one, but you're not going to build the plankton and the bait up and then get a school of fish underneath you.
I got a compliment from Daniel Skipper.
Doing
something right.
What does like when you're there again? I damn sure ain't no bait catcher because I can barely throw a net. Well, when you're catching bait, how does bait? Like say you're looking for a striper and you're looking for a certain time of year, it goes to a certain part of the water, certain depths. Did you look for bait the same way? I mean, does bait have specific habits that they do every year as far as getting in certain depths of water, or is there anything that they like better than others?
Yes. Like shad, for example, they like to spawn on, you ever heard of guys that like shoot docks for crappie or bass, or they like those old docks with like, you don't see many of them anymore, but with the styrofoam underneath them and the old pontoon boats that's got algae built up all over them, it gives the eggs something to hold on to. It gives them a place to bed. So they like areas. They do like areas like that. Riprap, anything that those eggs can hold on to in shallow water.
When I would catch shad, which I'm not good at it, but I used to catch enough to fish with. I noticed if I caught shad in the winter that I couldn't keep them alive. And there was like a certain time when the water got to a certain temperature, like in the 60s, and they would be in the same area, shallow water. But then once that water got up into like the high 50s and low 60s, I could catch them and keep them alive. But when I caught them in that really cold water, they'd red nose. They look like crap. So
how long was you?
The only way to catch a gizzard shad is with a net, correct? You can't. They don't.
They're
no
not
snag them with a treble hook
or sabikis or nothing like that. They will not hit nothing. Okay.
No,
what was that, Ryan?
Gizzard shad.
Ryan, I'm sorry.
When you was netting bait, was you just catching them like morning before, or are you talking about was you keeping them like over a day span or something?
Usually I'd have to keep them a couple of days because the way my work schedule was. Ideally, I'd like to catch them the day before.
Yeah.
But and usually it was I didn't really notice the time of day thing with catching bait. Like I could catch them in like culverts, shallow areas way in the back of creeks. I mean, a lot of times I'd go out there and fish the morning, and then I'd go try to catch bait around lunchtime. I think them bait hung out in them shallow areas in the early spring.
Have you not seen? It seems to me that herring are harder to keep than shad. Though.
But what now?
It seems like herring are harder to keep than shad.
Yes. And you can't. Herring got to be with herring. You know, if you try to mix a tank and keep them for a long time. I mean, I'm not talking about going out fishing, but if you're trying to keep them days, it's hard to keep herring with anything else. Like you just pretty much got to dedicate a herring tank.
Hey, rule to remember: never put trout in a herring tank. I put 12 trout with 3 dozen herring one morning, and honestly, by the time I got to the lake to fish, I had like 4 herring left, and there was 2 or 3 trout still swimming around with the tails in their mouth. So,
and when the trout aren't hungry, they'll just eat the eyeballs out of your herring. So you go down there and they look like zombie herring with no eyeballs, still trying to swim.
What water temp are you looking for if you're going to catch bait? I know on Norman, Spivey, when me and you know we catch bait at lights a lot, and it seems like once that water temp is early 60s, first thing in the morning is about when you start seeing those alewives circling those lights.
I've never caught bait off lights. And I think the biggest shad I've ever caught, and I've only done it a couple times, is at night. If you run a sodium light at night up on the bank, you can cherry pick the shad you want, and they can't see the net really. I mean, in shallow water, like
I've
a lot
never
of
really
bow
thought
hunters.
about running one in shallow water, but yeah, that's a good idea, especially in the spring.
Yeah, bow hunter was telling me about all these Mongo shad he was seeing, and they were shooting them and stuff. And I'm like, don't shoot them. And he's like, yeah, we're just running the bank with the trolling motor wide open with the sodium light on.
That's exactly how a bass fisherman fishes. Is once the shads start to spawn, once that water temp hits the early 60s in the morning, you can start speeding on that bank with your trolling motor, just going wide open and looking for that shad spawn. And you can look for, the shad birds, a lot of people, Shane Reel calls them Fred, your blue herons and cormorants and all those. And you start trolling real fast on the banks, and you will come across shad. Especially, they don't really necessarily like the straight banks, but if you can find some banks that have little cutouts and coves and all that stuff, you can really find shad just right up on the bank once that water temp hits the early 60s in the morning. And to kind of clue you in on where to go fish. My
most success is I would stand right over the top of my transducer with my net ready in about 10 to 15 foot of water in the early spring, and I'd watch my graph. And you can go over a pile of fish, you could tell how big they were. Like, I don't know if you've thrown a 5/8 inch net on a school of threadfin, but it's not good.
Hey guys, while I'm thinking about it, everybody that's still watching, JR forgot to tell y'all, if you don't mind, take your time to hit the like button. I think that helps us get views. So,
So I would go over and mark these small pods of bait, and you could tell they were bigger bait. A lot of times it'd be a school of crappie, and then I would just flip the net right off the bat, right at the transducer, kill the trolling motor. And that's the way I caught most of my shad during the day.
That's where side scan really comes in handy, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't have it back when I was trying to catch bait, but yeah, it would.
I know some places.
But if you're in 12 to 15 foot of water and you're marking it on your transducer, you can usually just flip that net over the back right next to the outboard and let it sink. And
got a question. Okay. Say the shad or the herring's a little bit deep and you're trying to find it on your depth finder. And I've asked this question. I've actually asked what's his name down there at and he kind of explained it to me a little bit. I asked a sonar doctor this years ago. What's the guy's name down there now in Anderson? Used to be a Marine. He opened that electronics shop right there past Captain Dave's in Anderson.
Paul Getty or whatever?
Paul Getty's. Okay, I'm going in my boat, no matter what kind of boat. Say I've got a Garmin depth finder and I'm looking for bait. As soon as that bait comes in my screen and I see a little ball, where do I throw my net out?
Behind your boat.
You need side scan.
But if it's in the back of the boat, my transducer's in the back. Does that mean that how far have I already passed that bait or my?
Well, I would mark bait with my outboard.
Yeah.
And then I would put my trolling motor down, and I would creep over where I marked it. real slow. And then if I marked it again, then I'd just flip my net right off the transom. Because if you're on the outboard, the time you mark it, and you got to have, when you're ready to catch bait, you got to be locked and loaded. I mean, you can't grab your net.
If the bait's thick, that works. But if you go over a pot of bait and it's not a very big ball, your cone on your transducer is only going out at a certain
30 degrees.
Yeah. However, you can make it more narrow. You can make it more wide. So you need to find out how you got your transducer set up, your sonar. And then once you mark it, look at your side scan and you can tell which side of the boat it's on, because you're going to mark it with your down, with your 2D, the cone's going to hit it no matter what side it's on. So if you look at your side scan, you can actually see which side that bait is on.
I think side scan, that's probably the best thing it's for, to me.
Yeah.
That guy, Mike Smedley, he actually has a video on this, and he says...
That's Scott's hero. Don't say nothing about Mike, because that's Scott Perry's hero.
Well, anyways, he said turn on your A-scope, because your A-scope is what's directly underneath your boat right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't even know what an A-scope is.
I don't either.
My Garmin's got it, but I don't know how to read it.
But see, mostly in Hartwell, the reason I did that is because I would lose these $100 nets because there's brush piles everywhere. And so I would creep across and make, if there was a pile of bait on brush, it's probably crappie anyway. I mean, I pulled up netfuls of crappie because to me, not doing it a lot, they mark the same as gizzard shad to me. But, what's he say? As soon as it comes on the graph trolling, they're already right beside you, halfway down the boat. Joey knows.
So, Joey, what does that mean? When you say we're already halfway beside you, wait till the ball is about the middle of your screen. Would put them right at the back of the boat, or
soon as I mark, I would mark bait. I don't know what Joey's gonna say. I'd mark bait and I'd come back to it, because Hartwell, you're never gonna get a net load of mangos, or I never have. I usually get 4 or 5, and so I would, soon as I seen that bait, I'd turn around, creep over them. If they were in the same spot, marked them again, I'd just flip it off the back. And that's how I had most of my success.
Now you can take your bait, your screen, wherever that bait is on your screen, and you can actually mark exactly where that bait is.
Because I noticed, like, outboard really don't mess with the shad if you're idling, but I've noticed. I usually can circle back, drop trolling motor, and come right back over top of them. And now, there's certain times where you can just see them flipping in the back of creeks and you don't even use your graph. You just see them. They're just tail flipping. And
yeah,
that's nice, but that don't happen all the time, especially in the wintertime.
So what do you do when you go into a back of creeks and you're looking for flips and you don't see no flips, but bait's there? What do you do? Just throw blind?
No, I mean, me, if I didn't see them flipping, I would probably look a little deeper. Like normally they're flipping in, 5-8 foot of water. I would probably go over to the 15 foot and ease around looking for them. But I don't know. I mean, bait catching big shad in South Carolina is, you almost got to be a fish. I mean, you almost got to put as much energy into that as you do fishing, and I just don't have the time or patience for it.
Yeah, just go at night. Go at night and
said, look for birds walking the bank.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to key you in onto where they're spawning.
Problem with blind casting, man, you're gonna catch little catfish, you're gonna catch threadfin,
if the water's high, you can go up to backs of little coves and creeks, and the water will be up in, on the bank, because you got to think how many organisms are on that bank. It's only underwater when the water's high. So if you look at the lake levels before you go and you realize the water is high, then you can go to the back of these little pockets and these little cuts and get up and throw your net in this water that's not normally there. And a lot of bait will be up in there feeding on a lot of those new organisms up on that grass and stuff.
And it seems like concrete. I guess concrete holds algae good, but like any kind of concrete culvert or concrete drain pipes coming under a highway or something seem to hold a lot of shad.
Now that's that's kind of the answer I was looking for. I was wondering. Joey said if you're throwing off the back, trolling with a big motor, 4 to 5 miles an hour, throw as soon as you see them start on your graph.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're going to pick them up probably towards, if you're in 15 foot of water, you're probably going to start picking them up towards the middle of your boat. So the time you throw,
Yeah.
it's probably going to be.
So dial in your cone. Find out how wide your cone is. Maybe take a tungsten jig head or something and throw it off there and see if you can mark it. See exactly where it needs to be, where you can see it, so you'll know how far your cone goes.
I think these guys that catch bait and are good at it, they put a shitload of time and effort into it.
I think a lot of them hit the easy button. I think a lot of them go out there at night, put lights out. A lot of them go to dams. As far as these guys that are actually out here running the banks and hitting pockets and throwing the net 100 times, and just random places, picking up a few here and a few there. Very few people do that anymore.
Well, my theory is, if I'm going fishing, I'm gonna leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. Why the hell do I want to go to a lake where I may get lucky and catch a
Well,
few
you got a good point.
Let me finish now.
I know where you're going. Go ahead, finish.
I may get lucky, and even if I know where bait is, if I know where it's at, okay, I've still got to go to that spot. There's probably not going to be nowhere I want to fish. I got to get a net out. I got to get shit all in my bait tank. I got to throw this net. I got to catch each fish.
You got to get your boat dirty.
Yep. And then there you're killing 2 hours fishing time. When you can pay $35 or $40 damn dollars, have your bait and go fishing. That's
it's definitely worth it. The worst part I hate about catching bait is my boat will be nice and clean. It'll be looking good. And I have to catch bait. And guess what? It looks like I haven't washed my boat in a month. It's actually absolutely nasty.
Terry McConnell called me yesterday. He was asking me about Clark Seal. And I said, Terry, I don't know nothing about Clark Seal no more. I said, I've crappie fished a couple of times. I said, I've never even really caught no big fish in Clark Seal. And somehow or another, we got on the issue of bait. And he said, and his exact words was, no offense to the guys that run the bait shop, because I understand it's the way they make a living. But he said, by far, the worst thing that ever happened to striper fishing was bait shops. Because he said back when me and Gene Lottie and Randy Brown and other people first started striper fishing, I guess Joey can vouch for this, there wasn't many people striper fishing because a lot of people, first of all, didn't even know how to catch bait, didn't know how to throw a net, or wasn't going to take the time to do it. Striper fishing didn't really get popular until bait shops started opening.
That's why you see a lot of alternative methods around here with the A-rigs and people using mussels and chicken and all this other crap.
Them old timers don't like it because as soon as people started getting bait, they started waxing that ass.
We don't have any good bait shops around here. The closest bait shop that's worth a damn that we have around here is Jamie's, and that's over an hour away for us.
Sounds like it would be a good business to start up. Joey Bagwell, get with JR, open up a bait shop.
Yeah, there's plenty of places to do it around here for sure. All right, guys. Well, hey, it's been a great show.
We're going to get off. We're going to stay on here. Ryan's still got questions.
No, I got to get off.
I didn't make a list.
Well, read your list off.
Read it off.
I can't. Y'all done hit about everything. I did not know that you could not use iodized salt, though. I definitely learned that tonight.
Yeah, go to Walmart and buy the pool salt.
Or you can buy the water softener salt, like the blueberry water softener salt.
Don't buy more.
Or you can go to Tractor Supply and get the feed salt, but you got to make sure it's not medicated. It's just pure salt.
Or you can get the ice cream salt.
Yeah.
Rock salt.
That's expensive, though.
But don't get Morton's, the ones in the little round blue cardboard thing with the little lady holding the umbrella up.
Yeah.
That's a no-no.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know, but it kills my doesn't help.
It has a chemical to it.
It's iodine in it. I believe it's iodine. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, it's got
iodine. I'm gonna say you're wrong. I don't think it's iodine.
Yes, it's iodine.
Well, that's something.
It's ionized salt. Does that mean it has iodine in it?
I don't know. Hell, I just know don't use the shit. That's all I know.
It says iodized, doesn't it, Wes?
And don't put pepper in there.
And hold on a minute. I don't have no fucking. Wait, let me make sure I don't have nobody's GPS coordinates is on here. So I'll put it up on the screen. Iodide. IODIDE. So we were all wrong.
Iodine.
Iodide.
With an E.
Iodine is like that red liquid that you get put on wounds.
That's
like
what
hospitals use.
That's mercurochrome.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's two
Google
totally
it and get
different
back
things.
to me. I just know you ain't supposed to use it.
Okay.
Joey, you know the easy button. You just call up Shane Foster and tell him to bring you some shad. That's the easy button, ain't it, Wes?
But I'm only that one alone.
I was kidding when I said the easy button, Joey. I just, it's hard to.
South Carolina really
Basically,
don't have it.
I'm equating it to fishing. If you were to go out and put out lights and catch fish, striper, people would be saying that's the easy button. Catching them on rod and reel is the hard thing. And I think that going out and trying to catch them without lights or without using any kind of modern technology, that would definitely be the hardest way to do it.
Well, I know I threw a net 1,000 times in South Carolina, and we pulled up to the dam in Tennessee. Didn't even have the cover off the graph. Threw the net up next to the damn concrete wall and pulled in about 200 fucking gizzard shad. So that is pretty easy.
Yeah, they're extremely easy up at the dams. They love to hug that concrete. I think that they're hugging that concrete about the same way they'll hug a bank.
They're eating the algae off it, I bet you. Plus, they're getting out of the current.
And that's why the concrete cowboys are so productive.
Catching them 15-pounders that weigh 40 pounds on the scales. That damn fish Anthony Johnson had might have been 38 pounds. That little bitty ass fish, he jumped 53 pounds. Golly.
Anthony's a big dude, though. You got
Anthony ain't bigger than me, that little short bastard.
He's big. I bet Anthony weighs 280.
Oh, whatever. That fish was poor. It looked like it's about. I hope they kept him filleted. It looked like it's about to die.
You never
Skinny
know.
as hell.
You never, when a big guy's holding a fish up close to him and the angle of the camera.
Oh God!
You can't see the girth. You never know.
Anthony done bastard. He just thinks everything's 50 pounds in Tennessee.
Damn. Well,
I have a bass tournament on Saturday morning on Freightliner.
Are you a basser now, JR?
No, like I said, my company has this bass tournament every year.
That ain't a bass.
They have 4 a year, and this is the second one. And I got pissed because I didn't do well on hickory, so I want to fish one more. So this one's going to be on Wiley. And
I don't know if I can cast.
My arm was hurting so bad that next day. God, I was miserable.
How big did Anthony's fish was again? 53.
Yeah, it was a monster.
This right here is only 55.
Hang on, let me take that comment down so you can see it. I think we have Anthony's on here, Wes.
Yeah, put that monster up. Put that big monster Anthony caught up there in the Tennessee River. I mean, oops, did I say that? Up there in Tennessee.
There it is right there. That's Anthony's.
46.5 pounds. Look, he ain't no 280. Look at that scrawny ass. Got the jailhouse tattoos.
There's another picture of it right there.
Look how short he is.
Well, I wish I had a picture of Spivey's striper.
Look at his shorts. They're down to it. Put that back up there. I want to see them shorts again. Are them capris? Pedal pushers.
I'll tell you, the fish look big. As Spivey knows how to. We're gonna have to do a show on how to hold a fish and let Spivey.
Jane Howington can hold a fish better than anybody I ever met.
Ryan Spivey can hold one better than anybody I've ever met.
It's some little guys. That's why I let my wife hold all the fish. Because if I hold it, it looks like a 10-pounder.
Hey, I used to aggravate old Corey about being little. I met that motherfucker at the weigh-in at the SBC. God almighty, dude, my granddaughter's bigger than he is.
Who's that?
Corey. What's Corey's last
Well,
name?
Ryan Spivey's a little guy, but he has cauliflower ears, so I wouldn't mess with him.
Corey Martin. Man, listen, dude, my granddaughter.
Was he a wrestler?
Yeah, he wrestled in high school.
Yeah, I don't mess with wrestlers. Fuck that.
Look at that meathead. You can't tell that boy's tough. Look at him. You can't
wrestlers will put some shit on your ass.
I'm a millennial. Remember, I'm not tough.
So if we get in a fight, I just got to hurt your feelings.
Look at all. Right, where'd you catch all them fish at, man?
Caught that
Them
thing. I
look like
caught all
some
them. in a-
busted ass fish too. All red spots all over them, skinny as hell.
I thought somebody said saltwater fish don't count.
They don't.
That was Scott that said that.
They know it don't count too.
Coming from the guy that's never caught one.
It don't count.
Who was that?
Michael Walker.
I'm gonna have to start getting a pick, holding the fish like that, because that is cool how you hold them vertically like that.
All right, y'all.
Yeah, it's been a good one, guys. Thanks for coming on, Ryan, Scott.
Ron,
We'll see you guys next week on Real Fisherman.
Joey, appreciate all your, Joey Bagwell, appreciate all your input tonight, buddy.
Good night. Night,
Peace.
Wes. See you next week.
Good night, brother. Peace, Scott.